Hi. So for my reflection for Tech Ed, I decided to do a Prezi and a screencast, and I chose to do a screencast because making screencasts were a large part of this course, and we used screencasts so we could do demonstrations and look up different technological tools that teachers can use for assessment, instruction, communication, and so on. So I thought it was an appropriate way to do my reflection. So let's get started. So the guiding question for this course was, how can I use technology in my teaching to support learning for all students? And in this reflection, I'm hoping to touch on enough of my learning points to answer this question. So, like I said before, we had to do some research on tools that we could use for assessment, inclusion, and instruction. So I just put a few up here that I used for my screencast and my lesson plans that we had to make. We had to make 3 lesson plans with each one of these tools for one of these 3 purposes, and I chose Quizlet for assessment, Bookshare for inclusion, and Newsela for instruction. And the point of this assignment was to just show how many different ways using technology we can do these 3 things, these 3 very important things, because we need to, as teachers, be able to assess our students. We want to be able to include all students and make information accessible to every student. And then instructional purposes, obviously we need to be teaching the kids something. So I would like to share my experience with Bookshare. I taught my lesson. We had to teach one lesson using a technological tool, and I chose Bookshare for inclusion. And I had a student with specific learning disability and basic reading skills, and I set him up with Bookshare, which is an online library with text-to-speech technology. And it reads the book and highlights the letters so the student can follow along without having to decode, which means that comprehension doesn't get lost as easily, and he can listen to the book and repeat back what he read. And it's still reading a book. It's still including him in the instruction. He ended up not really liking the program because it was a little robotic. It was hard to understand, so I had him switch to RazKids, which also offers a text-to-speech program, and he preferred that much better. So I guess from this experience, I just learned that you can try something. It may not work, it may work, but you just have to be knowledgeable of what's out there and what's going to work for kids to include them in the classroom, because not all kids are going to be able to read a paper text, or they're not all going to be able to do math just on a piece of paper. There's a lot of technology that can accommodate these needs, and Bookshare is one of them, which I guess I would recommend if that's what's available. It is free, but if there was a better program that the school could afford, I would recommend some sort of audiobook technology or text-to-speech technology for students with reading disabilities, because it is helpful and it does include them in the classroom. All right, so something that really interested me during this course was we talked about coding and the gender inequality that exists with coding and in STEM. And I have a quote here. It says, "There's a lack of interest compounded by a lack of direct experience and consequently skill from females." And in this article, it talked about, they did a study with girls and boys and how they reacted to coding. And they found that girls, when given the opportunity to code, they can do it. They're not like deficient in the ability to code. It was just girls don't really want to code because we don't push them to do coding or like STEM activities or technological activities. And that's a problem because we're seeing, like in the technological fields, there's far more men than there are women because there's no interest. And if there's no interest, they can't build skill. And if they don't build skill, they're not going to go for these careers. And in the world we live in now that's so reliant on technology, we need to make sure that females are getting out there so there's an equal mix of males and females in the field, because it is taking over our world as we speak. So that's something that was very interesting to me and something I'm going to remember and focus on when I'm a teacher, and keeping it in mind. All right, so TPAC means technological pedagogical content knowledge. It combines technology, or knowledge of technology, knowledge of pedagogy, and then content knowledge. And the article that I am referencing here uses the word equilibrium. So a teacher, in order to use TPAC correctly, needs to balance all of these 3 things, need to be in an equilibrium together. So I have like a little sum of what it means, and it's a lot more than I initially thought or what someone would initially think of TPAC. You have to know how to combine pedagogy with technology in order to teach content, but it's also you have to know like any problems that are going to happen when you teach a certain content with a certain strategy, with a certain piece of technology. You just need to know how each one of those things are going to work together in order to do it properly. And this article makes the point that it does take practice, so it's kind of unrealistic to expect like myself to go into the field and immediately know how to do this. It's going to come with time. It's going to come with learning new strategies and new content and new pieces of technology, and just learning how all of those things work together and figuring out which things work the best for student learning. So that's something I'm going to keep in mind as well as I'm teaching. All right. And in regard to digital citizenship, so Google has this awesome curriculum. It's called Be Internet Awesome. And we explored this a little bit. There's lessons on just how to keep kids safe on the internet and how to make sure they're being responsible and like making sure they're not getting scammed. So we've got when in doubt, talk it out. It's cool to be kind. Secure your secrets and don't fall for fake. So don't fall for fake is a lesson on just not falling into scams. And I explored this lesson because especially with middle schoolers, they're getting access to Facebook, they're getting access to Twitter, they're just on the internet a lot. And we want to make sure that when something pops up and says, oh, you want a free iPod, click on this and call this number. We want them to know that that's a scam, and we don't want people getting their personal information, their address, their phone number, anything. We want them to be safe on the internet. So this curriculum is just to keep the kids safe and make sure that when they're on the internet, they're being responsible and not falling for scams or giving their information away. And also, it's cool to be kind focuses on cyberbullying, which is another huge thing that kids struggle with nowadays, because it's so easy to be mean over internet, because when you're behind a screen and you can't see the other person, like it doesn't feel like bullying, but it's still bullying, and it still has a huge impact on people. So we need to teach these kids explicitly what to do on the internet, how to stay safe and responsible and respectful, because they may not know without us teaching it to them. So that is our responsibility as teachers in this technological world that we live in. Something else that was a huge backbone of this course was the ISTE standards. And the ISTE standards are technology standards, and they exist for educators and students. So I put charts of each standard here, or each group of standards here, and I don't have them all listed out, but basically that's just a guideline for educators to follow when using technology in the classroom, and then standards that students can meet when using technology in the classroom. So I provided a couple of my favorite examples that relate to digital citizenship. So this is an educator acting as a leader with technology. It says educators seek out opportunities for leadership to support student empowerment and success and to improve teaching and learning. So we want the kids to use the internet and the technology to their advantage, and we need to make sure that we're meeting that standard and being the leader that's teaching them how to properly use the internet and be responsible and safe, or they're not going to know how to do it. And then for kids, in the second set of standards, digital citizen, students recognize the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of living, learning, and working in an interconnected digital world, and they act and model in ways that are safe, legal, and ethical. So that means like following the Be Internet Awesome standards, or the curriculum, I should say, and citing your work. We need to teach kids how to cite their work, because with all the copyright laws that exist, that's very important. We don't want any plagiarism happening, and we want to make sure they know that it is a huge deal if they take a picture and they claim it's theirs, because it's not legal. And it's kind of the same thing that I was talking about earlier. It's just keeping the kids safe, and that's a standard that they as students have to meet, that we as teachers have to implement. So we need to get them to that point where they're not going to know. All right, so technology can also be used by teachers for consumption, and by that I mean just keeping track of like important, useful, or relevant information, and you can use RSS readers or bookmarking tools to keep that information in place. So both of these tools, you can take a a link or an article or pictures or a website or anything, and you just keep it in this tool. And there's one, I can't remember the name of it right now, I'm blanking, but it was a bookmarking tool, and I tried it out, and it's like its own like file on your computer, and you just keep everything in there, and when you keep something in there, it recommends things you might like, and that comes up every day. So that could be a good tool for professional development. It can keep teachers up to date with what's going on in the world, or it can inform their pedagogy or their content knowledge as well. And communication, we talked a lot about communicating with families using technology, and I found that you can use blogs to just kind of write about what's going on. I tried out a blog, and I did an example where I was typing about a field trip, and you could just share with families like what's going on with field trips, what students need, and you don't have to risk a note being lost when you put it in a student's backpack. And digital grade books are good at communicating about grades. Class websites, some teachers make class websites that showcase student work and like current news events happening in the classroom. And Twitter, we read a lot about using Twitter. It's good to use if you be careful, because if you say something personal about a student, or even something like the student's name doesn't even have to be in it, just something like, oh, this kid today, blah blah blah, they can still figure it out, and it's not good. And you just want to make sure, if you're using social media for communicating with parents or even for your own professional development purposes, you just need to be careful, because you're a teacher, you're a role model, so if you're going to use that, be careful. All right, and equity. Equity is a huge part of what I do and what all teachers do, is to make sure that everybody has equal access to information, and that can be used in ed tech. And we read an article, the Understanding the Underserved Learner, written by the ACT, talked about ways that we can use technology to help underserved learners, and they classify those as minorities or low socioeconomic status, or students with low socioeconomic status. And if they have equal access to information, they're more likely to learn about various cultures. They're more likely to do activities that are engaged in critical thinking, rather than just having them sit and listen to a lecture. It just gives them more opportunities to learn. And the article talks about something called a digital ecosystem, which is right here. This is actually the Digital Ecosystem 2.0. And it just says that these underserved learners will thrive when using technology if they have equal or quality access, quality resources, which is in this red bubble right here. And then that also goes along with having clear learning goals set for them and having a positive learning community. And then that all circles around to the learning outcomes. So what they're going to learn. And it all has to do with like policy, because you never know like what your district or state or federal policy is on technology. So your school may not have certain technology that another district may have or another state may have. So that does impact this little ecosystem that a student is in. So to ensure that this is going to work for these students, you need to, as a teacher, try your best to create a good digital ecosystem for those students. All right, and the final piece that we just got to is my philosophy. So my last project of this course was to create a philosophy statement. And in sum, my philosophy statement is that you can use technology in your educational career for almost anything. You can use it assessment, instruction, inclusion, communication, professional development, equity. It can be used for anything. You just have to know how to do it. You need to develop that TPAC and know how to combine all of your skills and use technology to show off those skills. So as I go into a teaching career, that is going to be my philosophy on tech ed, that I can use it for really anything if I possess the skills and the knowledge to do so. So, and then these are just my works cited and a very long thing for my picture URL. So I hope you enjoyed my reflection, and it was a great semester. I very much enjoyed it, and I will carry my learning into my teaching. Thanks for watching.